What if the Saiyans invaded the living world of Bleach? Would the Soul Society be able to send powerful warriors to stop them, or would they have their way? Following a similar pattern, the Saiyans will invade Earth with the goal of selling it off to the highest bidder after exterminating all life on the planet. Raditz will be the first Saiyan antagonist to land on Earth, as it was the case in early Dragon Ball Z. He'll be met with opposition from the Soul Society arc Gotei 13, and since in Dragon Ball Z, Vegeta and Nappa would show up roughly a year later, this will land their arrival somewhere in the time skip between the Arrancar arc and the Fullbring arc. So Ichigo will be powerless and Aizen will be sealed. But for a close approximation, we'll be drawing upon the members of the Gotei 13 of the Fullbring arc, since visored captains like Shinji Hirako return to the Soul Society around this time. At this point, we'll also have access to Spirits Are Forever With You characters like Zaraki and Asashiro, who fight very similar to Dragon Ball Z characters, with world-ending type attacks, which will make things more exciting. To understand what's at stake here, the Saiyans want to eliminate all life on Earth, but in the Bleach universe, if this were to happen, the balance of souls between the worlds would be destroyed, and the universe itself would collapse. Therefore, the Gotei 13 has to intervene. Now, as for their power systems, we'll be connecting Reidoku from Bleach and Spirit Energy or Ki, which means that scouters can read the Shinigami power level, Saiyans can see and interact with spiritual entities, and Shinigami can also directly sense Ki with their Reikaku. Saiyans have a very bad habit of laying waste to their environment, so Raditz's ship will land somewhere in the mountainous regions around Karakura town, and given that the Shinigami can sense spiritual energies in the living world, and possess technology to even measure spatial distortions, the Soul Reapers can connect a portal or send Kaiman to the living world, even all the way to Raditz's location.
Can't find paradise. All we have to do is go, free your soul. Dragon Soul!
To understand Raditz's power and speed, Piccolo with a power level of 322 could easily destroy the moon. In fact, he was able to do this with a single blast of Ki without even charging his energy. And Raditz withstood what seems to be the same attack with no issue. This would indicate that moon level is not a problem for him. Some would even quantify this feat beyond moon level because of the method of destruction and time frame. But Raditz already has more going for him, like a power level ranging from 1200 to 1500, outside the ballpark of these casual moon busters, who can also be classified as subrelativistic to faster than light, since Piccolo's casual attack reached the moon in seconds. After removing their weights, their power levels grew to 408 and 416, implying greater output and speed, and yet Raditz was still almost imperceptible to them. Raditz would go on to react to the special beam cannon, which had a power level of 1330, and with Piccolo's added reaction implies greater speed than his first attack, which was able to reach the moon in seconds. Now, is it possible to push Raditz further into the planetary tier? With a power level of 10,000, it is possible to destroy a planet, but it's also worth noting that a planet like Earth is considered small, and Raditz has more than 1/10 of that required power. Furthermore, the Galactic Patrol only stands a chance against Saiyans when they're young, despite possessing weapons that can destroy Earth according to the Dragon Ball Super anime, and they seem to be very much willing to use explosive type weapons against them, despite their biological explosive weapons like the Extinction Bomb being ineffective. When the Supreme Kai mentioned Buu's power to destroy planets, Vegeta added that Saiyans could do that too, in a more generalized fashion, and Raditz was an upper level warrior assigned to Nappa's group, so it is possible for him to be classified as planetary. Raditz also possesses the Uzaru transformation, which would multiply his power level by 10 times, securing that baseline power level of 10,000 required to destroy a planet, if not outright making him large planetary. Now, how does Soul Society arc Bleach compare to this? Let's say the alarms go off in Mayuri's research facility, alerting them to Raditz's arrival on Earth. They would measure his power level, which is over 1,000, and send a group of captains or a singular captain capable of rivaling that power. But at this point, only a handful of captains would scale to planetary and above. I could also imagine Kenpachi Zaraki running to the battlefield, only to get chokeslammed by Raditz. Because at this point in time, Kenpachi has limited his powers too much, but he would leave without permission and the head captain would have to send someone to go help him. And this is where Hanataro comes in. In all seriousness, Unohana would likely be kept back for the sake of healing, which means Genryusai himself might be the best choice. If Mayuri figures that Zaraki would head to the living world without permission, he would likely attach surveillance bacteria for the sake of scientific research, and Sosuke Aizen, who is practically a mind reader, would also attach his own surveillance equipment. Despite their individual interests, they don't want the universe to collapse as a result of Raditz's genocide, so once his goal is revealed, they'll also make sure that powerful captains are sent to stop him. But how strong are the captains? In Soul Society, the three strongest captains are Aizen, Unohana, and Yamamoto. And they all scale above the Valley of Screams feat from the movie Memories of Nobody and The Spirits Are Forever With You, which I explained in this video. Asashiro, with a mere fraction of his power, was able to rival or surpass the feat from the movie, in which the substance which made up an entire dimension was detonated in the Dangai Precipice world, which not only surpassed the amount of energy necessary to wipe out both worlds, but had enough energy left over to push the worlds apart. Asashiro produced a comparable if not superior feat, while being merged with only a section of the Dangai Precipice world. And when he returned to his true body, which was merged with the entire Seirete, Kenpachi Zaraki had no problem facing off against him. Unohana beat this Kenpachi in base form countless times before factoring any Bankai multiplier. And despite acknowledging her strength, Aizen is stronger than Unohana, and Genryusai in just Shikai can overpower all of that. We can factor Uryu blitzing his shadow, his casual perception speed, Mayuri blitzing this same Uryu, and the absolutely gargantuan speed gap between this arc and Genryusai, and the other two captains, who would drastically outpace much faster characters from the later arcs, and would even scale to end-of-series characters who drastically outscale these Soul Society arc beyond light speed feats. So any one of these three captains would be enough to deal with Raditz. And let's not forget hacks like spiritual cutting and incineration, as well as illusions. But how would they handle the second invasion of Nappa and Vegeta between the Arrancar arc and the Fullbring arc? Now, the Shinigami might have already made preparations for their arrival. For example, Mayuri or Kisuke could analyze the workings of the Saiyan Scouter, trace the signal between Scouters, and use it to determine the arrival of Vegeta and Nappa. In a much earlier part of the story, the Shinigami scientists were able to connect to the radio waves of Earth, which is in a different dimension. And in Can't Fear Your Own World, Mayuri Kurotsuchi used a Kido spell to track energies across light years of outer space, even across separate dimensions. So they would most definitely be prepared for the arrival of the two, and make preparations to protect the people of the living world. For example, Soul Society technology can even freeze space within certain proximities. But how would they handle a power level of 18,000, which is more than likely planetary to large planetary, and would likely correspond to FTL plus speeds, accompanied by someone who is much stronger than Raditz with a power level of 4,000, which would more than likely increase further with certain attacks. It's also worth noting that Nappa is in fact an elite nobility among the Saiyans, which should make a more planetary scale for Nappa more digestible. However, this still wouldn't be enough to stop the Bleach universe, and interference from Squad Zero and a certain someone would be unnecessary at this point. Even if we added the Cybermen, who are basically a bunch of Raditzes. Firstly, Soya Asashiro in a weakened state scales to the power to wipe out two worlds, using planetary worlds in this context, and the additional power to push those worlds apart. And so would Zaraki, whose power would keep rising. Secondly, the Valley of Screams could be upscaled given the presence of an atmosphere and daylight. And thirdly, both Zaraki and Soya are potentially far stronger, depending on how you scale the power to rip through space-time with pure energy, and the power to destroy the boundary between one dimension and another. And while they possess attacks which can cut and damage the soul, Asashiro has fusion hacks, and the far stronger Genryusai and Unohana possess the power of soul destruction and healing. In Dragon Ball Z, characters can focus their ki into small points to make their attacks far stronger, even to the point where they baffle much stronger opponents. For example, Krillin creating a concentrated disk of energy is a threat to far stronger opponents like Nappa. And this principle also holds true in the Bleach universe, especially for these 1,000-year-old plus beings who have complete mastery over their spiritual energies, and especially for Genryusai, who, along with his incredible power, can concentrate his power into an area much smaller than Krillin's Destructo Disc, the very edge of his blade. And this Bankai Shield, Zankano Tachi West, is at least a vaporization level beyond the Shikai. And while Prince Vegeta is multiple Blitz levels beyond earlier Dragon Ball Z feats, the same applies to these four captains with regards to Bleach. And as I explained in this video, Genryusai would also scale to a significant portion of certain end-of-series Bleach speed feats. And thanks to her comparison to Aizen through Club Outside, Unohana also gets closer to Genryusai's tier. We must also consider the possibility that with an entire year to work, Captain Kurotsuchi would study Raditz's corpse and devise methods to exploit the Saiyan's physiology. He might even press a button and a sonic weapon just literally kills them both. Or upon their arrival, they could use Kisuke's technology to trap them in a different dimension or space, and then use the dimensional destroying Kido cannon to destroy that entire space. At this point, Vegeta and Nappa don't have the means or power to escape separate dimensions. So whether we choose technological prep or combat, Bleach should win. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and be on the lookout for more what if videos.